Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang back at it with another video. So this will be against 23 Dragons. I assure you, interesting openings have been played, and I sort of borrow an opening that Nice Chesty and Fooplicious played against me, and that is the Alakine defense. Just playing it for fun, just going for it. E5, knight d5, d4, d6. So this is all normal theory. And here I play g6. So this is what I would consider the most natural way to develop in the Alakine. Bringing the bishop here, knight to c6. Well, bishop g4 first also works. Here I would think, if h3, bishop takes f3, and if queen takes f3, knight c6. So that is my goal, right? I want to do that. I want to do it so that there's no protector of the d4 pawn. So bishop e2, and now knight c6. And I think at this point, I'm feeling very comfortable. Castles, and I castle. And now rook c1 happens. And at this moment, I sort of say, okay, well, I have these two pawns that I'd like to take. So let me disrupt all that with bishop takes f3. Because if bishop takes f3, knight takes c4. And if g takes f3, then I'm going to play knight takes d4. So I have some targets to fry. Bishop takes f3 in the game, and I take on c4. Bishop takes, b takes, and now queen b3. Now I would say that queen b3 looks like a good move, and I think it's an okay move. It looks natural. I could have played d5. I remember evaluating this in the game, and I remember not playing it because I said, okay, well, if rook f to d1, and the knight comes to a4 and to c5, well, it's okay, but I kind of feel like I don't want this backward pawn, this kind of structure where one day, if b3 ever happens and this knight has to back up, the consequences of leaving this pawn open is not great. So I avoided all that. I played knight to b6. I said, okay, well, if you want to attack this pawn, you can, but I'll play rook c8, queen d7, I'll be okay. So then knight e4 happened, right? Attacking this pawn again. So I played queen d7, and I hinted at a very, very interesting threat. So after rook fd1, I made my intentions clear. Queen f5. And surprisingly, there's only one move that keeps the hold here. That's queen f3. Knight d5, bishop to g3, and now I'm going to queen trade, of course, because I am up material, right? I'm up a pawn, and being up a pawn is significant in some scenarios, and sometimes it isn't significant, so I thought it was significant. But our friend in the game, 23 Dragons, played queen to e3, and I'm sorry, but gotta fall victim to a fork sometimes. Bishop and queen, and our friend 23 Dragons played knight takes d6, but after e takes d6 there was not much to see, and our friend threw in the towel. So what went wrong here, right? Why all of a sudden 23 Dragons just resigned? I think the opening was okay, right? But I think when we are looking at a position like this, and the knight is coming to c6, it's very important to neutralize this bishop, right? If the bishop gets to g4, that's pretty lethal territory. So what I would suggest here is that white should play the move h3. Just prevent that bishop from coming to g4, and just prevent it from being active overall, right? trickier in the game, as you saw. Bishop g4, knight c6. I was able to take and take on c4, and I didn't have that much difficulty trying to create counterplay, right? So it just took a little bit of effort, and h3 would have been the move to count on, but in the game, I created plenty of threats against the center, and I made myself at home. So let's go into the next game. The next game was interesting, I would say, right? It was a modern that our friend 23Dragons played, and I tested him. I played h4, and it's odd, I know, but sometimes you just gotta throw out the diesel engine and see if it works. h5, d4, d6. So 23Dragons is playing perfectly. Bishop c4, I'm playing c3, knight f3, and I'm not doing much. I'm just putting my pieces on the squares I believe look good. So after castles, I play f3. And this is a mistake because, well, d5 is coming, and I clearly am unaware that d5 is coming. So I play f3. It's not exactly an inaccuracy per se, but it's more of like maybe it's too slow. I should instead be prioritizing my development. So I could play, well, of course I could move the bishop back, but I could also play knight to d2. I need to prioritize my development, right? Because I know that, okay, well, I might have an attack on this side, but it's also important to really recognize that I need to involve all my guys before doing anything. So after f3, our friend 23Dragons had a missed opportunity through d5. But it's hard to say whether d5 will actually produce any effect after bishop d3. It does, because of the move e5 here. So, hard to see, but that happens sometimes. So I would have to take, and then knight takes d5, and well, e5 is coming, so I wouldn't want to try to fight that, so I need to run somehow. So the computer recommends castling, and then, well, knight to a5 looks like a good move because the knight keeps control of e3. That's going to prevent this bishop from coming out. So instead of moving this knight to b6, move this knight to a5. And then bishop takes, queen takes, and now we can develop the bishop out, but there might be knight c4. So there's always tricks that our friend 23Dragons had, and I clearly haven't navigated this very well. So after f3, e5, now I cement it with d5. I play bishop e3 because I recognize that development is key here. Then knight h7 happens, and immediately I'm like, well, okay, that's interesting. So now I get to play g4. But the question is, do I take and play g4, or do I just play g4 right away? So I played g4 right away. You might be like, well, what are you doing here, National Master? Why are you telling us to attack when we haven't even castled yet? Well, the answer is sometimes if it's tempting, and you go for it. But after knight takes g5, I took my chance. H takes g5. Let me just keep this file open, right? If you take on g4, I don't even have to take back on g4. I could play queen to e2 for all we know and get to h2. For all we know, I could get my knight here and take on f3, right? So there are so many possibilities. But in the game, king h7 happened. Our friend 23Dragons was like, oh, I can't take it no more. Pawn takes h5, rook h8. I said, I don't think it would be beneficial for me to open it up to allow this rook to come down, so I'm going to close it down. And after king g8, I move my king to d2 to connect my queen and rook. Bishop f8, knight to a3 now. I'm now saying, okay, well, I need to develop this guy. Maybe try to long-term bring it to d3 and play f4 one day. So my goal is to open up everything. After f5, however, our friend 23Dragons gave me a boost. En passant, and that, my friends, the knight is trapped. So what really led to the downfall of 23Dragons? Well, I mean, the opening was fine, right? There was nothing particularly notable in the opening. I have to say the move d5 is worth noting as a missed opportunity from 23Dragons. But it's hard to see, right? Because instinctively you already brought your pawn here, and you want to ideally execute e5. But in this case, d5 is actually very beneficial. It sort of opens up the position, and then you pave the way for e5. Because the worst case is running into e5 with d5. So in order to prevent white from doing that, you play d5 yourself and then e5. So, but e5 happened, I was able to develop and play g4. And I think knight takes g5 only helped me because it gave me this open file. And what you usually don't want to do as black when you are the person defending against an attack is you usually don't want to concede that open file, right? Although it may look like, well, the doubled pawns, right? Well, the doubled pawns are only a very small part of what I intend to do. And I think, well, king h7 was just like, I'm dead lost. And then rook h8. This was a good bunker plan, but, you know, f5 definitely accelerated the loss. Maybe c6 could have happened, and then d takes c6, b takes c6, king c2. You know, things could have happened with d5. I would have played like bishop d3. But the problem in this position for black is this rook has nowhere to go. And so, in a sense, black may be playing without a rook or down a rook, right? Meanwhile, my buddies can get out here. We can play f4, and it's just much more comfortable for white. So, I have to say, definitely f6, f5 accelerated the downfall. But I mean, it's hard to say, right? But knight takes g5, well, you don't want to do that. And I'm not sure if knight h7 then was probably the best move. I mean, I think one move that black could make is the move c6 and take a jab at this closed looking pawn structure. So that could have been a food for thought. But yeah, there are many ways to really figure out how to play the modern, and it's a very hard opening to play. So against h4, I mean, some people play h5, some people just ignore it and play d6, right? So reactions sometimes backfire, but I think what's important to note here is that 23Dragons had the chance to strike in the center, right? f3, d5. And then there was more than that. I mean, I got lucky. What can I say? Our friend 23Dragons played knight h7, and I got lucky, and our friend 23Dragons gave me the open file, so in a sense, I did get lucky here. Part skill, but part luck. So, hope you enjoyed this. Hope you keep playing chess. Hope I inspire and fuel your curiosity to continue practicing. And please, have fun.